Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In our next conversation with Ann and Dan Hatch, we're going to talk about the founding of Christ Church. How did all that happen? We'll also talk about priesthood authority. Fundamentalists have a different idea, and we'll even get into whether women have priesthood. You won't want to miss this conversation. Check it out. So I think one of the other really interesting, we were talking a little bit this last night, and I'd like to dive into a little bit more. So Joseph Musser dies in 1954, and around 51, 52, there was kind of a split in what became kind of the FLDS and the AUB, Apostolic United Brethren, and Ruin Allred led the AUB until his death in 1977. And so Gerald Peterson, was he on the Council of Friends then? He's kind of what you guys would consider the founder of your church, right?
Of our church, yeah. So Gerald Peterson wasn't born an LDS person, converted when he was 16, around 1933, up by Logan.
Okay.
Richmond, is that up there? Richfield, something like that. I don't know. I'm not a Utahan by native, so I don't know. But anyway, so they lived up there for quite a while. That's where he met his wife, Faye, and you know, their journey here. He became a doctor by trade, and he ended up working with Ruin in Ruin's office for a while, and they became friends, and they joined eventually the AUB, and you know, they confided in each other off and on. And so the story is that, you know, around 1971, he was given a blessing, and we have our church websites has some pamphlets, and there's a pamphlet called A Testimony of a Prophet or something like that. And in there, it shares his story. But he basically got this blessing from a George Maycock, and he had it recorded. It was recorded when it was given. And he went later and talked with Rulin and asked him, you know, is this valid? Is it true? And Rulin confirmed it and said, there's more to come for you. But I'm not going to tell you right now. And that was in 71-ish. The blessing was definitely in 71. I'm not sure when that conversation happened with Rulin. But he spoke to him, and at a later date, so somewhere, I'm going to say between, say, 71 and 75, there was another conversation with Rulin and Gerald Peterson Sr. And in there, he ordained him or set him apart to become a key holder. But he wasn't given those keys or anything, and he wasn't on the Council of Seven or anything in there in the AUB that I'm aware of. If I'm getting that wrong, I'm sure I'll get corrected by Benjamin Schaefer.
That sounds right to me.
But
Benjamin, you feel free.
Yeah, feel free to jump in. But anyway, so he, you know, went on. Rulin confided him in, asked him to set up a United Order down in southern Utah. He bought some property to do that. Interestingly enough, the previous owner, I think Sven Nelson or something like that, had named that piece of property the Kingdom of God.
And, oh, really?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
And this is down by Cedar City, roughly?
Yes, it's west of Cedar City, over by Modena. And we call the property Paquin, which means God power in Adamic language. But so Kingdom of God, Paquin, you know, it's interesting. But Gerald Sr. bought that property in 75, 76, somewhere in there. And people started moving there and living, trying to get things set up, you know, getting infrastructure and things like that. It was pretty primitive at the time, you know, to get things going. But some of his own family, his children moved down there, and his wives, and they were working towards that end. And in 77, you know, May 10th, 77, Rulin was killed. And shortly thereafter, and I'm really bad with these dates, so, you know, I hope you can forgive me. But somewhere shortly thereafter, Rulin appeared to Gerald Sr. in his office. And
kind of as an angel?
As kind of as an angel, you know, type resurrected type being, I guess. and set him apart and gave him the keys. And
Was that in the Knight Mangum building? I think it was.
no, I think that was in his office. It was in his doctor's office. He came in.
I thought that was the Knight Mangum building. Is that not the same?
I don't think they were the same building.
Oh,
I think they were different buildings.
Huh.
I'd have to go look at the addresses to know for sure.
Benjamin, check us out.
Yeah, he'll let us know. But anyway, so he saw him there, and there were some other people there that witnessed. They saw Rulon walk in and go in and talk to him and saw him leave, and then they found out that Rulon was dead. So maybe it was close around there. Maybe I'm getting two stories fuzzy kind of in there, but he did came and he set him apart, though, as a key holder, and told him at that point to set up a church. So Gerald Sr. worked towards that end, filed the paperwork, and legally created a church entity in January of 78. And then, like, the first conference in April kind of made it official that way. And immediately, part of that was to also have plans to build a temple on that land down in southern Utah. And so they started working towards that, which they completed in the early 80s. It took a few years, and they worked hard, and members built the temple, kind of like I remember growing up, and the members helped build the chapels. And so the members were helping to build this temple, which served as a temple and as a chapel, multifunctional building.
Is that the Pyramid Temple?
And that's the pyramid over by
Okay.
Modena.
I was thinking that was here in Nevada. I got that messed up.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I'll try to check it out on my way home, I hope. Okay, so I know in the LDS Church we refer to Joseph's, the first vision. Is this the second vision with Gerald and Rulon already?
Well, I guess we haven't referred to it that way, but it's kind of has very similar characteristics, yes.
Yeah. So, because I know I like to say the 51 split, because that's what Joe Jessup said. If we go back to the 51 split, that was kind of over the issue of whether Rulon, I know, let's see, it was Joseph Musser that was the leader. Mm-hmm. And so he had had a stroke or something, and Rulon was his physician. And then Rulon kind of jumped the seniority line. Is that the same thing when Rulon picked Gerald, that Gerald jumped the seniority line?
It is a similar story, yes.
Okay.
Patterns repeat themselves.
And so the AUB doesn't recognize that?
The AUB does not recognize that, no.
Do you guys have good or bad relationship with the AUB, or?
Overall, we consider them family. They're part of us, just like the LDS Church is a part of us, and independents are a part of us, and we're all cousins, right? In the Restoration, we have no ill feelings towards them whatsoever, and hope that it's the same. We have family there, personally, and other members of the church have family. We have Allred's descendants here in this church, Owen Allred's descendants here
oh, really?
in our church.
Because Owen took over after Rulon died in the AUB.
Correct. One of his daughters came this way and married a member of our church and had a family, and we have some of them.
So I'm curious, because one of the big things that Joseph Musser taught, that I believe all fundamentalists pretty much agree, is church is separate from priesthood.
Correct.
And so in the fundamentalist community, because I know in the LDS Church, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to talk about how we officially would view fundamentalists in general. We would view all fundamentalists as apostate, and we wouldn't recognize their priesthood. But within fundamentalist community, the AUB, the FLDS, Centennial Park, Nelson Eller, there's so many groups. Would you guys recognize other groups, the AUB, as having legitimate priesthood authority?
I'll let you answer that.
That's an interesting question. To a large degree, probably not. However, with that being said...
Same for the LDS.
Yeah, same with the LDS.
So you would view LDS as having legitimate priesthood authority?
Correct. So in other words, if they're not following the proper key holder, then there's a question in mind right there. It's kind of like when Joseph Smith passed away and the church split and Brigham Young came out to Salt Lake. How many of the members stayed behind? How many of those were ordained elders and were members of the priesthood that stayed behind in Nauvoo and such? And then what came with Brigham Young? And who was to sit there and decide, well, who's leading what? Because even the LDS Church would have to say, well, they were ordained as well. And so anything that came down through them would have to be accepted. But they're not, and they're not going to. Then we have another issue and problem that when Heber J. Grant changed the ordinance of ordaining and not conferring the priesthood on men, then what happened? Then you had David O. McKay later go, oh, we're going to get back to where it was supposed to be because men need to have the priesthood conferred upon them before they're ordained to an office. And that was an example of something that we look at. So are there possibly people out there that have the priesthood that are righteous men? I believe that there are, because I was told later after I became a member of the branch, and this was told by Gerald Jr. to me personally. He said, Dan, you never lost your priesthood because the Lord knew you were coming here. I'm going, okay, that makes sense. Because I was always trying to strive to do the right thing and go the right direction.
So that's interesting. So I would assume you would probably, well, I know if you were a missionary, you were at least an elder.
Yes.
And then were you ever a 70 or a high priest in the LDS Church?
No.
Okay, so you were an elder when you joined Christ Church.
Correct.
And so because you joined Christ Church, was that Melchizedek priesthood ordination legitimate?
I was baptized a member. I was ordained into the Aaronic priesthood, and that's when I baptized my wife.
Okay.
And then later, I was actually ordained an elder by Brother Michael.
Later, that day, or was there some time?
Day and a half.
Day and a half later.
Oh.
And not only ordained an elder, but also set apart as a branch president in Idaho.
Oh, my goodness.
So I had all of a sudden, and my only desire, really, when I joined the branch, was to hold the Melchizedek priesthood. That was my desire, to make sure that that was correct.
So if you had to be essentially reordained to both the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood, then they wouldn't have recognized the LDS ordination.
True, but so they did the Aaronic one without, they said, we have permission to do this now so you can baptize your wife. So that was just so he could baptize me. And then...
I mean, you were probably still wet when they did that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was standing in the water.
Okay.
Yeah. In the snow, and it was an outdoor pool.
Oh my
that we were
goodness.
baptized in, and it was a snowstorm.
You and the
'cause it was
vicar
in
tonight do
December.
these winter baptisms.
Hey,
Holy cow.
we got baptized in a casino. Well, on top of a casino, the Atlantis, on the roof of the casino.
It was that or a muddy pond. I had a choice. I picked not the muddy pond. So at midnight.
Oh my.
But what we were told was, while we do recognize that you still had the priesthood, we just went through the motion to make it legitimate so that there would be no questions later.
Oh, okay. So, okay. But, okay. Can I say it this way? Is the LDS Church apostate?
I would say yes.
Okay. And so their priesthood would not be legitimate.
There again, I want to qualify that. I believe that there are righteous men on this earth, even members of the LDS Church, that are doing everything in their power to do what's right. And if so, until they've heard the gospel and in its fullness, and if they accept it, great. If they reject it, no. But there again, it's like saying, oh, is there no other priesthood authority on the face of the earth? No, that's not true, because we know the three Nephites have priesthood authority. They're on the earth. We knew that John the Beloved, he wasn't taken from the earth. And I know that their priesthood keys and authority and such are far greater than even mine, in that regard. So are there other men? I believe there are, because if the three Nephites, what were they doing? Just running around doing nothing? I would imagine they probably ordained other men with priesthood. And if those men are righteous, wherever they are, they have the priesthood, and it'll be recognized when that time comes.
Okay. So I have another question with regards to how you would view the LDS Church, because I know Joe Jessup, who was one of my favorite guests, he always talked about the AUB, and of course he's Ruin Allred's grandson, but he said that we always tried to be close to the eaves of the church. We weren't necessarily in the building, but we would stay right outside the building. And because I know, well, it seems like, maybe you correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, but there's been a story, and I think it's probably more AUB than any other group, maybe FLDS, I'm not sure, but that the LDS Church is kind of the JV team, and then the fundamentalists are the varsity. Would you agree with that characterization?
I honestly believe, this is my personal feeling, I'm not going to speak for the church in this, but the LDS Church has an important mission still in part, and that is to get the message out about Joseph Smith, about the Book of Mormon. Just like you served a mission, I served a mission, and we did what we were asked to do, and we did it to the best of our ability. At that point in time, I think these young men that are going out, and young sisters and such, that are spreading the gospel, that is important. And so there is a mission there, no matter what, for them to do. And I would be the last one to say, well, you don't have miracles, or you don't have the Spirit, or whatever. That would be an out-and-out lie, because there are good men in the LDS Church. They do have the Spirit, and they can receive revelation. And if they're honestly striving, to be close to the Lord, they'll get those messages. They'll know what to do at times. But as far as us recognizing them as a whole, no.
And here's kind of why. So back in 78, when Gerald Peterson set up this church, he had a revelation given to him, and he wrote a letter, and he released the LDS Church. And so we believe that all of that, the church keys and the sealing keys, came back together underneath Gerald W. Peterson Sr.
Okay.
So they've been released.
Well, the LDS Church has been released from what?
Released from their duties as holding the keys to the church.
Oh,
because
is that like an excommunication?
Maybe, I guess.
Maybe in a way,
But that
yeah.
letter was sent to
The apostles in
and
the first presidency.
at the
So it would have
time.
been President Kimball
Yeah,
at
it
the
would have
time.
been President
Yes.
Kimball, and I believe Romney,
Yeah.
and
Eldon Tanner, your cousin or
all
uncle or
three of
something.
them are related somehow. Yes, to me.
Well, interesting. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Ann and Dan Hatch. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about Wilford Woodruff. He definitely changed things in the church with the manifesto. Is he a traitor?
It put me through the emotions. I mean, I went through like a grief process, if you will, in a way, because like I was mad at him. I was upset. They lied, all kinds of things. All these emotions came out. And then I came to kind of an understanding that he had a role to play as a mission of his own on this earth. And, officially Christ Church follows up through Joseph Fielding Smith. And then, so that's number 6, right? And so then we break off and we follow the fundamentalist line for priesthood.
So Joseph F.
Sealing.
Smith. Fielding was in the 70s.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, you're right.
I had it backwards.
Joseph
You're
F.
right,
Smith.
Joseph F.
Okay.
So, number
Oh,
six.
so
So we do recognize Woodruff and Lorenzo Snow and Joseph F. Smith
Okay.
as prophets.
Prophets.
And the last one to have both those keys that I mentioned that, Gerald Sr. put back together.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.